She moved through the small cafe with a quiet grace, balancing plates, cups, and trays with a skill born from years of practice. Every morning she arrived before the sun, tying her apron tightly, making sure everything was in place before the first customers trickled in. She greeted them with a soft smile, polite words, and a patience that seemed endless. Most people who saw her thought of her as just another waitress doing her job, someone who kept the cafe running smoothly. Few ever looked beyond the apron, the hair tied back, and the tired but calm eyes. They never knew the life she carried inside. The world of music tucked away in the corners of her mind. Her days began early, often before the cafe even opened. She liked the quiet hours when she could sip her coffee and watch the streets slowly come to life. It was in these moments she allowed herself to think of music, to remember the sound of piano keys under her fingers, the way the notes used to float and fill her small childhood home. Those memories were bittersweet, reminders of a world she had loved, but had set aside when life demanded her attention elsewhere. The cafe was small and cozy, a place where people came for warmth, conversation, and the familiar smell of freshly baked bread. She knew most of the regulars by name. There was the elderly man who came every morning at 8, reading his newspaper while drinking black coffee. The young couple who always shared a pastry, whispering to each other in soft tones that made her smile. The students who came in the afternoons hunched over laptops, earbuds in, and the occasional group laughing loudly in a corner. She knew their habits, their preferences, and sometimes even their moods before they spoke. It was part of her job, part of the invisible service she provided, making everyone feel seen while remaining unseen herself. She moved through the cafe like a shadow, quick and precise. Orders were taken and delivered with a calm efficiency. Plates were cleared before anyone noticed they were dirty, and smiles were given where needed. She could balance multiple tasks at once, her hands steady, her mind focused, yet always aware of the little things, the creaking floorboard near the counter, the way the sunlight hit the window just so, the quiet hum of the refrigerator. It was a rhythm she had learned to love, though it never quite replaced the music she missed. The cafe manager often praised her, though she never seemed to notice. Compliments felt strange, almost uncomfortable, as if she were intruding into a world that wasn't hers. She didn't need recognition. Not really. The work itself, the steady movement of daily tasks, small moments of connection with customers, these were enough to keep her going. Yet beneath it all, there was a constant pull, a memory of something more. Something she had once held in her hands and could never forget. Her apartment was small, not far from the cafe. It was filled with the usual clutter of a busy life, laundry waiting to be folded, dishes that never quite made it to the sink on time, bills stacked neatly but untouched. On one side of the room, hidden beneath a worn sheet, was an old piano. It was scratched and faded, the keys a little yellowed with age, but it was hers. It had been hers since she was a child, a gift from someone who had believed in her talent long before she did. She rarely played it now, only allowing herself to touch it when the apartment was silent, when the world outside had gone to sleep, and she could pretend, just for a moment, that her life was still full of music. She remembered the first time she had sat at that piano, the way the notes had felt under her fingers, the way the sound had filled the small room. It had been magical, a language she understood without words. As a child, she had dreamed of performing on stages, of traveling, of being someone known for her music. But life had other plans. There were bills to pay, responsibilities to shoulder, and dreams that had to be put aside. The piano remained a silent witness to a talent waiting, hidden, patient. In the cafe, she found moments to hum softly when she thought no one was listening, letting the melodies she remembered from childhood float briefly into the air. It was a secret she kept, a tiny rebellion against the ordinary life she led. Sometimes she would tap her fingers lightly on the edge of a table, imagining the piano keys, the way a simple chord could make everything feel alive. These small acts were enough to remind her that she had not lost herself entirely, that her music still existed somewhere inside. Customers came and went, many too caught up in their own lives to notice the quiet depth in her eyes. A friendly smile, a nod of recognition, a perfectly timed cup of coffee. These were the things they saw. They never asked about her life, never thought to look beyond the surface. And she did not volunteer her story, for it felt too fragile, too easily shattered by casual conversation. Music was her world, and she guarded it fiercely. Like a precious secret she wasn't ready to share. There were days when the exhaustion threatened to swallow her, when long hours on her feet made her body ache and her mind foggy. Yet, even on those days, she found small moments of joy: a perfectly made cappuccino, the laughter of a child with a chocolate stain on their cheek, the satisfied sigh of a customer who had enjoyed their meal. These moments reminded her that life, even in its most ordinary form, had beauty. Still, the music within her called, constant whisper she could not ignore. Her coworkers knew her as dependable, quiet, and capable. They admired her work ethic, though they did not know the depth of her talent. She did not seek attention or praise, preferring the comfort of routine. Yet there were times when she watched others perform small acts of creativity, someone drawing a doodle on a napkin, a coworker humming a tune, and she felt a pang of longing. It reminded her that her music was not meant to be locked away, that the world had a place for her gift, even if she had yet to find it. One rainy afternoon, she found herself alone in the cafe after a long lunch rush. The rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a rhythm that seemed to speak directly to her heart. She wiped down tables slowly, savoring the sound of her movements in the quiet space. For a moment she closed her eyes and let herself imagine the piano beneath her fingers, the notes cascading like raindrops. The memory was vivid, almost painful in its beauty. She could almost feel the keys, almost hear the music that had once defined her life. Her boss peeked in, checking to see if everything was in order, but she did not see the longing in her eyes, the soft tremble of someone holding back a world within. It was easier this way, to keep her music hidden, to maintain the facade of the ordinary waitress. There was a safety in invisibility, a comfort in being unseen. And yet, every time she touched a piano key in her mind, a spark of something extraordinary reminded her that she was more than she appeared. Evenings were the hardest. The cafe closed, the chairs were stacked on tables, and the streets outside emptied. She walked home slowly, her mind replaying fragments of music from her past. In the solitude of her apartment, she sometimes allowed herself to sit at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. She did not always play. Sometimes she simply remembered the feeling of music, the joy it had once given her. These moments were private, sacred, a reminder that her talent still lived, quietly, beneath the surface of her everyday life. She often wondered what it would be like if someone knew. If someone recognized the skills she had honed in secret, if someone could see the music inside her. But the thought was quickly pushed aside. Life had taught her caution. Dreams were fragile, easily broken, and she had learned to protect hers by keeping it hidden. Still, the hope remained, a tiny ember that refused to die. She carried it with her through the long days of work, through the routine of serving coffee and clearing tables, through the ordinary moments that made up her life. Her story was not one of fame or recognition, at least not yet. It was the story of quiet strength, of hidden brilliance, of a life that seemed ordinary, but was extraordinary in ways most people would never notice. She moved through her days with grace and skill, her secret talent tucked safely away, waiting for the moment when it could be revealed. And though no one else could see it, she knew it was there, alive and waiting. Ready to emerge when the time was right, she often found herself thinking about the past, about the time when music was the center of her world. She remembered the small house she had grown up in, the way sunlight poured through the windows in the afternoons, lighting up the piano that sat in the corner of the living room. It had been old even then, its keys a little uneven, its sound slightly off, but it had been perfect to her. She had spent hours sitting on the worn stool, her fingers dancing across the keys, learning to make the piano speak the words she could not say. Her parents had noticed her talent early on. They had been proud but cautious, knowing how fragile dreams could be. There were always practical concerns, schoolwork, chores, family responsibilities. Yet despite the obstacles, they tried to nurture her gift, A local teacher came once a week, bringing new music, patience, and encouragement. She had listened, learned, and practiced, sometimes late into the night, while the rest of the house slept. Music was her escape, her joy, the one place where she felt truly alive. She remembered the first time she played a piece that made others stop and listen. Her fingers had been small, clumsy at first, but as she played, the notes seemed to flow effortlessly. Her parents had watched with wide eyes, their hearts swelling with pride. It was a moment she carried with her, a memory that reminded her of the power she had, the beauty she could create. And yet, life had a way of changing course, even when it seemed perfect. Her family faced hard times soon after. Money grew tight, and the luxuries of lessons and music books were no longer possible. She watched as her parents worked tirelessly to keep the household afloat, taking extra shifts, worrying about bills, and doing everything they could to make ends meet. She understood then that her music, though precious, could not come before survival. She put aside her lessons, her performances, her dreams of stages and applause, and focused on helping where she could. It was a choice she made without complaint, but it left a quiet ache in her heart. She practiced in secret when she could, using scraps of time whenever the house was quiet. Her fingers remembered the keys, her mind remembered the melodies, and the music remained alive, though hidden. There were moments when she would close her eyes and imagine herself performing, imagining the sound filling a room, imagining people watching in awe. These moments were bittersweet, reminder of what she had lost, but also proof that it was not gone entirely. School was another challenge. She tried to fit in, to be like the other students, but her heart was always pulled toward music. During lunch breaks, she would hum softly to herself, tapping rhythms on the table when no one was looking. Teachers occasionally noticed, sometimes encouraging her, sometimes dismissing it as a childish hobby. Still, she continued quietly, stubbornly, keeping her connection to music alive in small, private ways. Her friends were unaware of her talent. She had learned early on to hide it, fearing both jealousy and disbelief. It was easier to be like everyone else, to laugh at jokes, to join in games, and yet keep a part of herself, untouched, safe. Only in her room, only when she was alone, did she allow herself to truly be who she was. There, she could play as much as she wanted, experiment with melodies, feel the joy of creation that she could not share with anyone else. She remembered a time when a school talent show was announced. Her heart leapt at the idea of performing, of showing her music to others, even if just a few people. But doubt quickly crept in. What if she failed? What if they laughed? What if it made things harder at home? So, she watched from the sidelines, clapping for others, cheering quietly, while her own gift remained locked away. The disappointment was sharp, but she told herself it was only temporary. That one day she would find the right time. Even as she grew older, the world continued to pull her away from music. She took part-time jobs, helped her family, and tried to live a normal life. Her piano, once a constant companion, became a quiet presence in the corner of her room. She would glance at it, sometimes imagine playing, sometimes just remember the sound. The music lived inside her, patient and waiting. Like a friend who refused to leave despite years of neglect, there were small victories, tiny sparks that reminded her of her talent. A teacher would compliment her, a stranger might stop and listen when she played, and in those moments she felt alive again. But they were fleeting, and the rest of the world demanded practicality, work, and responsibility. Music was no longer the center of her life, but it was never gone. She carried it with her, tucked safely into her heart, ready to emerge when the right moment came. Her life in the cafe was a continuation of this quiet existence. She worked hard, interacted politely with customers, and maintained the routines that kept her afloat. But inside, the memories of her past, the music she had loved, were always there. Sometimes in the hum of conversation or the clatter of dishes, she would hear a note, remember a melody, and feel a spark of that old excitement. It was a reminder that she was still capable of more, still capable of beauty and creativity. She often thought about how different her life might have been if circumstances had allowed her to follow her dream. She imagined stages, performances, applause, and the thrill of sharing her music with others. And yet, she did not dwell on regret for long. She had learned resilience, patience, and the quiet strength of carrying something precious even when the world cannot see it. Her music was part of her, and she would always find ways to keep it alive. Evenings were still a refuge. After her shifts at the cafe, she would walk home slowly, letting the world calm around her. She would unlock her apartment door, enter the quiet space, and sometimes, just sometimes, sit at the piano. She did not always play for long, but when she did, it was as if time itself paused. The notes filled the room, echoing through her memories and her present life. It was a secret world, a world where she could be herself fully, without compromise or restraint. She remembered a conversation from years ago. Someone had asked her what she wanted to be. She had hesitated, unsure how to answer. The truth was, she wanted to be a musician, to share her gift with the world, to feel the joy of creation and the connection it brought. But the practical answer had always been something safer, something ordinary. Now, she realized, the practical world had not taken everything from her. She still had her music, still had her passion, still had the potential to reclaim what she had once loved. Her life was a balance between the ordinary and the extraordinary, between work and passion, between what was expected of her and what she longed to be. She had learned to navigate both worlds, carrying her hidden talent with quiet pride and careful secrecy. And even though most people could not see it, she knew it existed, waiting for a moment to shine. The past was never far, the music never forgotten, and the dream, though delayed, was still alive in her heart. The cafe was unusually quiet that evening. Most of the customers had left. The rain outside had slowed to a soft drizzle, and the chairs were stacked neatly on the tables. She moved through the empty space, wiping down surfaces, arranging chairs, and checking that everything was in order before locking up. It was a familiar routine, one she could perform almost automatically, yet her mind was restless. The silence brought a strange kind of tension, a sense that something was about to happen, but she did not know what. Her eyes wandered to the corner of the cafe, where the old piano sat. It had been there for as long as she could remember, a relic of a time when the cafe hosted small musical evenings. Now, it was mostly decorative, a forgotten piece of furniture that no one ever touched. She approached it slowly, almost hesitantly, and ran her fingers over the keys. The familiar sensation brought a warmth to her chest, a memory of countless hours spent in private practice, of melodies that had once flowed effortlessly under her touch. She sat on the worn bench, her hands hovering above the keys. For a moment, she hesitated, as if asking herself whether it was right to play. The cafe was empty, but what if someone walked in? What if she was judged for indulging in a passion she had hidden for so long? The questions were fleeting, and soon her fingers began to move, finding the notes naturally, almost instinctively. The first few chords were soft, tentative, but as she continued, the music grew stronger, richer, and more confident. The sound filled the empty cafe, echoing off the walls, resonating with a power that she had not allowed herself to feel in years. It was as if the piano recognized her, welcomed her back, and together they created something that felt timeless. She closed her eyes, letting the music carry her away from the worries of daily life, from the constant routine of work, from the responsibilities that never seemed to end. In that moment, she was free. She did not notice the door opening. A customer who had forgotten a bag lingered in the doorway, surprised by the sudden beauty of the music. He stood quietly, unsure whether to interrupt, captivated by the sound that seemed almost impossible for someone who looked so ordinary to produce. The music wrapped around him, filling the cafe with emotion, and he could not help but watch as her hands moved skillfully over the keys. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. No, only the flow of talent and passion that had been hidden for so long. The music changed, shifting from soft, reflective passages to more intense, lively sections. Each note seemed to tell a story, a tale of joy, loss, hope, and resilience. She played from memory, from instinct, letting the music speak in ways words could not. It was personal, intimate, and powerful, a gift she had kept locked away, but now shared without realizing it. The lone customer was mesmerized, unable to move, feeling that he was witnessing something rare and extraordinary. She played for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes. The rain outside had stopped, and the quiet street seemed to listen along with him. She was lost in the sound, unaware of the world outside the piano, unaware of the presence of another person. Each chord was filled with emotion, each melody a reflection of her life, her struggles, her hidden dreams. It was a moment of pure honesty, a release of years of suppressed talent, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. When the final notes faded, she opened her eyes and was startled to see him still standing there, clapping softly, a smile of genuine amazement on his face. She felt her cheeks flush, suddenly aware that her private world had been witnessed. She tried to explain, to laugh it off, to brush it aside, but he shook his head. "That was incredible," he said quietly. "I had no idea someone here could play like that. Truly remarkable." She felt a mix of embarrassment and pride, unsure how to respond. Praise had always been awkward for her, especially when it came unexpectedly. But the words lingered, resonating more deeply than she could have imagined. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not for her role in the cafe, not for her polite demeanor, but for who she truly was and what she could do. Word began to spread slowly, almost like whispers, among those who had been in the cafe that night. A coworker mentioned it to another, a regular customer spoke to friends, and soon more people were curious about the quiet waitress with the extraordinary talent. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Part of her wanted to retreat, to return to the safety of invisibility, while another part felt a thrill at the possibility of finally being recognized for what she could do. Over the next few days, cafe felt different. People watched her a little more closely, listened a little more carefully when she hummed, and some even asked if she played often. She answered politely, carefully, not revealing too much, but inside. A fire had been lit. She realized that hiding her talent had kept her safe, but it had also kept her from truly living. The music within her demanded attention, and she knew she could no longer ignore it. At home, she spent more time at the piano, experimenting with melodies, playing for longer periods, and allowing herself to feel the joy of creation fully. She remembered the dreams of her childhood, the stages she had imagined, and the applause she had once longed for. The piano was no longer just a relic or a memory. It was a living companion, a bridge between her past and her present, a reminder that she was still capable of beauty and expression. One evening, a small group of friends and acquaintances gathered at the cafe after closing. She was asked to play, hesitating at first, but then she agreed. The piano welcomed her. Her fingers danced across the keys, and the music filled the room. The audience was silent, mesmerized, their eyes wide with awe. She played with passion, with emotion, with the confidence that had been buried for years. And when the final notes echoed and faded, the applause was immediate, heartfelt, and overwhelming. It was a turning point. She realized that the world could appreciate her talent, that her music was not meant to remain hidden forever. The experience gave her courage, a sense of purpose, and a renewed connection to her gift. She began to understand that while life had forced her to take a different path, it had not erased who she was or what she could achieve. Her coworkers, once unaware of her talent, now looked at her with new respect and curiosity. Regular customers returned, hoping to hear the music that had surprised them before. She began to perform more openly, though still modestly. Feeling the thrill of sharing her gift and the joy of being recognized for something that had always been a part of her, she continued to balance her life in the cafe with her musical pursuits. But now the two were connected in a new way. Her work provided stability, her music provided fulfillment, and together they formed a life that was both ordinary and extraordinary. The fear of judgment and the habit of hiding slowly faded, replaced by confidence and the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming a part of herself she had long neglected. The piano, once a silent witness to her hidden talent, became a symbol of her resilience, her patience, and her courage. Every note she played reminded her that her dreams, though delayed, were still within reach. Every melody she created was a testament to the years she had spent waiting, learning, and preserving her gift. The music was no longer a secret, but a bridge to a future that was just beginning. A future filled with possibilities she had once thought impossible. After the first few moments of being recognized for her talent, she found herself struggling with a mix of emotions. Pride, excitement, and joy were there, but so were fear and self-doubt. She wondered if she was ready for the attention she could handle, people watching her, listening to her music, and forming opinions. For so long, she had hidden her gift, keeping it private and safe. Now it felt exposed, vulnerable, and she was unsure how to balance the thrill of being noticed with the anxiety that came with it. She noticed people looking at her differently in the cafe. Regular customers seemed to regard her with newfound respect. Coworkers whispered softly among themselves, casting curious glances in her direction. While some of it was supportive, she could not ignore the moments of skepticism and disbelief. Not everyone could accept that a quiet, ordinary-looking waitress could be a musician of real talent. Some people were polite but doubtful, and their doubt weighed heavily on her, threatening to pull her back into the shadows. Even at home, she wrestled with conflicting feelings. She would sit at her piano, practicing for hours, feeling alive and free while the notes filled her small apartment. Yet, when she thought about performing in front of more people, anxiety crept in, making her hands shake and her mind race with what-ifs. She questioned whether she was good enough, whether she deserved attention, and whether her years of hiding had left her talent weaker than she remembered. The doubts were relentless, and for a time, she wondered if she should retreat back into the quiet life she had known. Her friends and a few trusted coworkers began to offer encouragement. They reminded her of what they had witnessed, of the beauty and power of her music, and of the joy it brought to everyone who heard it. They reassured her that her talent was real, that she had nothing to fear, and that sharing it with the world could open doors she had long thought closed. Slowly, their words began to penetrate her doubts, providing a small but vital spark of courage. One day, a local music teacher visited the cafe and heard her playing. Impressed by her skill, he offered to mentor her, to help her refine her technique and prepare for public performances. The offer was tempting, but it also terrified her. Accepting it meant committing to being seen, to being evaluated, and to risking failure in front of others. For years, she had hidden her talent to protect herself, and now stepping forward meant giving up that safety. Still, something inside her, perhaps the longing she had carried for so long, urged her to take the chance. She began to practice more intentionally, setting aside specific hours each day to focus on her music. Her fingers moved with renewed confidence, and her mind was alive with new ideas and melodies. She realized that talent alone was not enough. Discipline, dedication, and courage were equally important. The music she created was no longer just for herself. It was meant to be shared, to touch others, and to show the world the person she truly was, beneath the apron and the quiet demeanor. As she grew more comfortable with her playing, she also learned to manage her fears. She practiced breathing techniques, visualization, and ways to calm her nerves before performing. Each time she played for someone, even for just one person, she gained confidence and a deeper understanding of herself. The doubts still surfaced occasionally, but they no longer controlled her. She was learning to trust her talent, her instincts, and her heart. Word of her skill spread further, and invitations to play at small events, local gatherings, and community spaces began to arrive. She faced choices she had never imagined, whether to say yes or no, whether to take risks or remain in the comfort of anonymity. Each decision was weighed carefully, with both excitement and fear. For the first time, she was living a life where her talent had meaning beyond her own private satisfaction, and it was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. One evening, she was asked to play at a small community event. Her heart raced as she prepared, unsure how the audience would receive her. She arrived early, sat at the piano, and took a deep breath. As her fingers touched the keys, the music flowed naturally, as if all the years of waiting Hiding and dreaming had been preparing her for this moment. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the emotion and skill she poured into every note. By the end of her performance, there were tears, smiles, and enthusiastic applause. She felt a sense of validation and relief she had never experienced before. It was a turning point, proof that she could face her fears and succeed. The experience also brought unexpected challenges. With recognition came attention, questions, and expectations. Some people wanted to know her story, her background, and her journey. Some offered advice or tried to influence her choices. It was overwhelming at times, and she had to learn to navigate the balance between sharing enough to connect with others and protecting the private parts of herself that were not ready for exposure. She discovered the importance of boundaries, of maintaining control over her own life and career. Through it all, she remained grounded in the reasons she had pursued music in the first place. It was not about fame or accolades, but about expression, joy, and connection. Every performance reminded her of why she had loved the piano as a child, why she had cherished every practice session, and why she had protected her gift for so long. The music was hers, but sharing it allowed others to experience the beauty she had carried quietly for years. She also began to inspire others. People who had felt hidden, overlooked, or discouraged in their own lives found hope in her story. They saw that it was possible to nurture a talent, to wait patiently, and to emerge when the time was right. She became more than a waitress or a musician. She became a symbol of perseverance, courage, and the quiet power of following one's passion despite obstacles. As she continued to perform, teach herself, and refine her skills, she noticed a transformation within herself. The shy, cautious woman who had hidden behind routine and work became more confident, assertive, and willing to take risks. She learned to accept praise gracefully, to embrace opportunities without fear, and to see her own worth not just in her work but in her talent and her heart. It was a slow process, filled with small victories and setbacks, but each step forward reinforced the belief that she could succeed and be proud of herself. Her piano became a constant companion, a source of comfort, inspiration, and empowerment. It was no longer just a reminder of the past, but a tool for building a future. Every note she played was a step toward reclaiming her dreams, asserting her identity, and connecting with the world in ways she had never imagined. She learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it, and that sharing her gift was not selfish, but a fulfillment of her true self. By embracing her talent and stepping into the light, she discovered a life richer and more vibrant than she had ever imagined. The doubts and fears did not disappear entirely, but they no longer held her back. She had found the strength to believe in herself, to trust her abilities, and to face the world with her music as both her voice and her shield. And in doing so, she realized that the journey she had taken from hiding her talent to embracing it was itself a testament to the power of perseverance, courage, and the enduring magic of following one's passion. The day came when she was invited to perform at a larger event, one that drew people from across the town and beyond. It was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed of as a child, though she had never imagined it could become reality. Her heart raced as she prepared, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves that made her palms sweat and her stomach flutter. She had practiced endlessly, refining every piece, every note, every pause. Knowing that this performance could be a turning point in her life, she arrived at the venue early, taking in the sight of the stage, the rows of chairs, and the audience beginning to fill the space. It was both thrilling and intimidating. For a moment, she wondered if she could do it, if she could hold herself together and let her music speak for her. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded herself that this was not about fear or perfection. It was about expressing herself, sharing the music she had carried for so long, and connecting with others through the universal language of sound. As she sat at the grand piano, the lights shining softly on the keys, she felt the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her fingers. It had been years since she had performed for such a large audience, yet the memories of countless hours spent practicing in secret returned to guide her. She began to play, first slowly, letting the notes build confidence and establish a rhythm. The music flowed naturally, each chord carrying emotion, each melody telling a story she had lived but never shared openly until now. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the depth of her expression and the technical skill of her playing. She could see faces lifted in awe, eyes glistening with emotion, and it gave her a profound sense of connection. It was as if every person in the room could feel the journey she had taken, the struggles, the hidden years, and the joy she had found in reclaiming her talent. The music was no longer just sound. It was a bridge between her life and everyone who had come to witness her. As she moved through her pieces, the intensity grew. The quiet, reflective notes gave way to bold, expressive passages, each one revealing more of her story, more of herself. She felt alive in a way she had not felt in years, a mix of exhilaration, liberation, and fulfillment. Her hands moved with confidence, her mind focused, her heart open. The performance became a conversation between her and the audience, shared experience that transcended words. When the final notes rang out, there was a brief silence, a moment suspended in time. Then the applause erupted, overwhelming and genuine. She felt a rush of emotions, relief, pride, joy, and a deep sense of accomplishment. For the first time, she truly understood what it meant to share her gift with the world and to be recognized for it. The years of hiding, the sacrifices, the doubts, they all seemed to converge in this one moment of triumph. People came forward to congratulate her, expressing amazement, admiration, and gratitude for the music she had shared. Some asked about her story, wanting to know how she had discovered her talent, how she had persevered through years of challenges, and what it felt like to finally perform on a stage. She answered modestly, sharing just enough to inspire but keeping the most personal details private. The joy in the audience's faces was enough to remind her that her music had power, that it could touch lives in ways words often could not. After the event, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the quiet moments in the cafe to the hidden hours of practice, from the fear of being seen to the courage of stepping forward. She realized that every experience had shaped her, every challenge had strengthened her, and every moment of doubt had been necessary to bring her to this point. The piano had been a constant companion, a source of comfort, guidance, and expression. It had helped her navigate life's challenges and ultimately led her to reclaim the dreams she had once thought lost. Her life began to change gradually. She received invitations to play at more events, to collaborate with local musicians, and to teach those who wished to learn. Each opportunity brought excitement and responsibility, but she approached them with the same care and dedication that had always guided her. She balanced her work at the cafe with her growing musical pursuits, learning to manage her time, energy, and commitments. The routine that had once felt suffocating now provided stability. While her music brought fulfillment, joy, and a sense of purpose, through it all, she remained humble and grounded. Fame and recognition were not her goals. They were simply byproducts of her passion and dedication. What mattered most was the connection she felt with her audience, the ability to convey emotion, and the opportunity to live authentically as both a musician and a human being. She discovered that true success was not measured in accolades or applause alone, but in the fulfillment that came from expressing one's talents and sharing them with others. She also became a source of inspiration for those around her. People who had felt overlooked or discouraged in their own lives saw in her story a reminder that talent, patience, and perseverance could lead to remarkable outcomes. She offered encouragement, sharing insights about her journey, the importance of practice, and the courage required to step into the light. Her presence and story reminded others that it was never too late to reclaim a hidden dream, or to pursue a passion with dedication and courage. In her personal life, she found a deeper sense of satisfaction and balance. Music was no longer a hidden part of her identity. It was fully integrated into her life. She continued to work at the cafe, finding joy in her daily interactions and in the small, ordinary moments that had once seemed mundane. But now, those moments were enriched by her understanding of her own capabilities. her connection to her art, and her ability to inspire others through her music. Life felt more vibrant, more meaningful, more fulfilling. Every performance reinforced her belief in herself and her talent. She no longer feared judgment or failure. Instead, she approached each opportunity with confidence, curiosity, and joy. The piano was both her voice and her companion, a constant reminder of the journey she had undertaken and the possibilities that lay ahead. She played not for fame or recognition alone, but for the love of the music, the stories it told, and the way it connected her to others. Looking back, she realized that the path she had taken, though filled with obstacles, sacrifices, and hidden years, had shaped her into the person she had become. The quiet perseverance, the private dedication, and the courage to step forward when the time was right had all contributed to her success. She understood that life often required patience and resilience, and that hidden talents, when nurtured and revealed, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Her story became a testament to the power of perseverance, courage, and the enduring impact of following one's passion. She had transformed from a quiet waitress with a hidden talent into a musician recognized and admired for her skill, dedication, and authenticity. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every moment of doubt, every hour of secret practice, and every challenge she had faced. In the end, she knew that her music would continue to evolve, grow, and inspire. She was no longer defined solely by her past, her work, or her hidden potential. She was defined by her courage to embrace her talent, her willingness to share it with the world, and her ability to touch lives through the universal language of music. And as she played each note, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had finally reclaimed her dreams, created a life that was truly her own, even though her public performances had brought her recognition and a sense of fulfillment. Life was not simply a series of stages and applause. She found that her journey continued in ways she had not expected. Each day presented new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to grow as both a musician and a person. She had learned that talent alone was not enough. Resilience, patience, and self-awareness were equally important. Her music had opened doors, but walking through them required courage, focus, and humility. She spent her mornings as usual at the cafe, serving customers and managing the routine tasks that grounded her in everyday life. The cafe had become a kind of sanctuary, a place where she could connect with people in small but meaningful ways. She enjoyed the casual conversations, the quiet smiles, and the sense of being part of a community. Yet, beneath the ordinary flow of work, there was a constant hum of excitement and purpose. The awareness that her life had expanded beyond what she had once imagined possible. Her afternoons were often spent at the piano, practicing and composing new pieces. She experimented with melodies that reflected her evolving emotions, drawing from her experiences, dreams, and the world around her. The act of creating music was no longer about escaping life. It had become a way to engage with it more deeply, to interpret the nuances of her own feelings, and to communicate them in a form that could resonate with others. Each composition was a reflection of her inner world, a story told without words, a language that everyone could understand. She also began teaching others, sharing her knowledge and experience with students who were eager to learn. Teaching was a new challenge, requiring patience, clarity, and empathy. She discovered that helping others unlock their potential brought her immense satisfaction and a renewed sense of purpose. Each student had their own journey, their own struggles, and their own dreams. Guiding them required not only technical skill but also understanding, encouragement, and the ability to inspire confidence. In return, she learned from them their passion, curiosity. Fresh perspectives enriched her own music and reminded her of the joy that first drew her to the piano. Despite the successes and opportunities, there were moments of doubt and fatigue. Life had a way of testing even the most determined spirit. She sometimes questioned whether she could sustain the momentum, whether she was living up to her potential, and whether the attention she received was temporary. These thoughts were natural, a reminder that growth was not linear, and that even accomplishments required reflection, patience, and continuous effort. She learned to navigate these moments with mindfulness, acknowledging them without allowing them to derail her progress. One day, she received an invitation to perform at a regional festival, a significant event with a large and diverse audience. The opportunity was thrilling but also intimidating. It required preparation, travel, and a level of performance that was new to her. She dedicated herself fully to practice, refining her technique, and experimenting with new interpretations of her pieces. Each rehearsal brought both excitement and anxiety, a mix that pushed her to perform at her best. She discovered the value of discipline, focus, and self-belief. Realizing that talent needed to be honed continuously to achieve excellence,